The bathroom was my sanctuary and my prison. It was the only room in our small apartment with a lock that truly worked, a sturdy deadbolt I had installed myself under the guise of wanting extra privacy. Leo had just laughed, ruffling my hair and saying something about my dramatic flair, but he did not question it. He never did. He just accepted the strange orbits of my anxieties, navigating them with a casual grace that I had always envied. The air in the small, windowless room was thick with the ghost of steam from a shower I had taken an hour ago, and the faint, clean scent of my unscented soap. It was a smell I had cultivated, a deliberate neutrality. Nothing too masculine, nothing too feminine. Nothing at all. It was the scent of erasure. My reflection in the mirror was a familiar stranger. I knew the lines of that face, the slight asymmetry of the jaw, the way one eyebrow arched a little higher than the other, giving me a perpetually skeptical look. I had spent 22 years looking at it. But knowing a map is not the same as knowing the land. My eyes would trace the contours, searching for something that was not there, a resonance that never echoed back. The face was a mask I had forgotten how to take off, fused to the skin by years of quiet compliance. Tonight, the feeling was sharper, a splinter under the nail. Leo was having a party. A real party, not just our usual routine of video games and takeout. People would be there, strangers, and the thought of performing me for a new audience felt like being asked to run a marathon with lead weights tied to my soul. I picked up the razor from the edge of the sink. It was heavy in my hand, a solid piece of steel and chrome. Not a cheap disposable thing, but a proper safety razor I had bought after watching hours of tutorials. It was part of a ritual, a secret liturgy I performed only when the walls of my own skin felt too thick to breathe through. The smooth, cool weight of it was a comfort, a tangible piece of a puzzle I was too afraid to solve. I twisted the handle, the metal groaning softly as the head opened. A fresh blade, thin and impossibly sharp, glinted under the harsh fluorescent light. I handled it with the reverence of a sacrament. This was the first step. Always the first step. The water drummed into the porcelain sink, hot and loud. I let it run, the steam fogging the bottom corner of the mirror, softening the edges of the stranger who watched me. I lathered the cream in a small bowl, the brush soft and full against the ceramic. The scent was sandalwood, a small concession to fragrance, something I could excuse as old-fashioned rather than deliberate. The foam bloomed, thick and white, and I painted it onto my legs, my movements slow and methodical. From ankle to knee, then thigh. The world shrank to this single, focused act. The brush, the cream, the skin. There was a quiet defiance in it, a reclaiming of territory that felt like it belonged to someone else during the day. The first pass of the blade was always the most satisfying. The smooth shh as it glided over my shin, parting the sea of white foam to reveal a path of impossibly smooth skin beneath. It was a sound of becoming, of stripping away a layer that felt foreign and coarse. I rinsed the blade under the hot water, watching the tiny, dark hairs swirl and vanish down the drain. Erased. Gone. I continued the work, my hands steady, my breath even. This was a language I understood. Pressure and angle, patience and precision. It was a meditation. A prayer whispered not with words, but with a blade against my own skin. My leg, now completely bare, felt alien and wonderful against the cool air of the bathroom. I ran a hand over it, marveling at the sensation. It was like touching polished marble, a surface so sleek it felt unreal. This was my skin. It had been there all along, buried under a layer of expectation and performance. A layer I had meticulously maintained for fear of what its absence might reveal. The feeling was a secret joy, a spark of rightness in a world that often felt askew. It was a key turning in a lock I had not known was there. The feeling was a secret joy I could never share. My hand stilled on my thigh as a memory, sharp and unwelcome, pierced the quiet sanctity of the room. It was from years ago, a pool party at a cousin's house. I had been a teenager, all awkward limbs and a voice that cracked with uncertainty. I had overheard two of my older cousins talking by the snack table, their voices low but carrying clearly over the splash of water and the tinny pop music from a portable speaker. They had been talking about another boy, someone from their school. "He shaves his arms. It's so weird," one had said, her nose wrinkled in distaste. "Like, is he a swimmer or just, you know?" The other had laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Totally trying too hard. It's just creepy." Creepy. The word had latched onto my brain, a venomous little burr. The fear it planted had been immediate and suffocating. The fear of being seen as trying, as unnatural, as wrong. The fear of my own body becoming a subject of their casual disgust. I had spent the rest of that day in the water, submerged up to my neck, hiding myself from their judging eyes. The memory still had the power to make my stomach clench, to make the smooth razor in my hand feel like a piece of damning evidence. I took a deep breath, the air shuddering into my lungs. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing the image of their sneering faces away. I would not let them live here. Not in this room. Not in this moment. I opened my eyes and met my own gaze in the mirror. The stranger looked scared. I offered him a small, tight smile that felt more like a grimace. I finished the other leg with a renewed, almost vicious determination. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my gut, but the act itself became a rebellion. Each stroke of the razor was a word in an argument I was finally winning. This is for me. This is mine. The smooth skin was not an affectation. It was an affirmation. It was the texture of home. When I was done, I rinsed my legs with cool water, patting them dry with one of the soft, white towels reserved for this purpose. I applied a thick, unscented lotion, massaging it in until the skin glowed with a soft sheen. The tactile sensation was electric. It was like my nerve endings had been asleep and were only just now waking up. I pulled on my oldest, softest pair of sweatpants, and the gentle friction of the worn cotton against my smooth legs was a secret luxury, a pleasure so profound and private it made my chest ache. I cleaned the razor, dried each piece meticulously, and put it back in its leather case. The ritual was complete. The armor was on. Or perhaps the armor was off. I was never quite sure which it was. I unlocked the door, the click of the deadbolt echoing loudly in the quiet apartment. The air outside the bathroom felt different, charged with the impending energy of the party. I could hear Leo in the kitchen, the clink of bottles and the low thrum of a playlist he was curating. "There you are," he said without turning around. He was arranging a motley collection of craft beers in a large metal tub of ice. "I was about to send a search party. Did you fall in?" "Just thinking," I mumbled, my voice feeling rusty. Leo finally turned, a bottle of something with a ridiculously overwrought label in his hand. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his cheerful expression softened into something more knowing. He had a way of seeing past the flimsy walls I built. "Bad brain day?" he asked gently. I just shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "It's just a lot of people." "It's not a lot," he countered, turning back to the ice tub. "It's like 10 people, max, and you know half of them." He paused, then added, "And they're all nice, no weirdos. I vetted them." I knew he was trying to help, but the logic did not soothe the frantic hummingbird of anxiety in my chest. It did not matter if they were nice. It was the act of being perceived, of being sorted into a box before I even had a chance to speak. The box of Leo's quiet, awkward friend. It was a comfortable box, a safe one, but it was suffocating me. Leo sighed, abandoning his task. He walked over and leaned against the opposite side of the doorframe, mirroring my posture. We stood there for a moment in silence, the only sounds the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle crackle of ice settling. "You know," he began, his voice low and conspiratorial. "I've been working on something. Something that might help." I raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Help how? Did you finally develop a superpower that lets you inject charisma directly into my veins?" He grinned, a flash of the easy confidence I admired so much. "Close. Better, actually." He pushed off the doorframe and beckoned for me to follow him to his room. "Come on. I want to show you." His room was a catastrophe of creativity. Books were stacked precariously on every surface, sketches were taped to the walls, and a half-finished sculpture that looked vaguely like a bird made of spoons sat on his desk. In the center of the floor was an old, leather-bound book, its pages filled with what looked like a combination of complex equations and elegant, flowing script. It was open to a page with a diagram of a human hand, lines of light and energy radiating from the fingertips. "Okay, Gandalf," I said, crossing my arms. "What am I looking at?" "Don't be a cynic," he chided, his eyes sparkling with an excitement that was both infectious and alarming. "It's not a LARPing prop. It's real. My grandmother sent it to me. She said it was time I learned the family trade." I stared at him. "Your grandmother runs a bakery in Vermont." "A very, very special bakery," he said, tapping the book with a reverent finger. "Look, I know it sounds crazy. I thought it was crazy too. But I've been practicing. Small stuff. Making my plants grow faster, finding lost keys, that kind of thing. But I think I've figured out something bigger." My anxiety was suddenly replaced by a profound sense of confusion. Leo had always been eccentric, but this was a new level. I felt a surge of concern for him, a worry that the stress of his final semester was making him unravel. "Leo, are you okay? Is this some kind of metaphor?" "No," he insisted, his voice full of earnest passion. "It's not a metaphor, Alex. It's magic. And I think I can use it to help you feel more like yourself." He looked me directly in the eye, and the playful energy was gone, replaced by an unnerving seriousness. "You're not happy. I see it. You hide in your room, you wear the same 3 gray sweaters, you look at yourself in the mirror like you're trying to solve a puzzle that's missing half the pieces. I just want to help you find them." His words hit me with the force of a physical blow. He saw. He saw it all. The carefully constructed neutrality, the layers of gray fabric, the quiet desperation. I had thought I was so clever, so subtle in my misery, but he had been watching the whole time, not with judgment, but with a deep and abiding concern. My throat felt tight. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, the words barely audible. "I'm talking about this," he said, his voice softening. He gestured around my body vaguely. "This container you're in. It doesn't seem to fit right. It's like a badly tailored suit. What if, just for tonight, we could tailor it perfectly, so it feels like it was made just for you?" He glanced at the book, then back at me. "There's a spell in here, a glamour, More than a glamour, really. It's a realignment. It takes what's on the inside and helps it bloom on the outside. A wild, terrifying hope began to flicker in the deepest part of my chest. It was insane. It was impossible. Magic was not real. But the sincerity in his eyes was absolute. And what if it was? What if, for one night, I did not have to fight so hard? What if the outside could just match? The idea was so seductive, so potent, it made me dizzy. You want to use magic on me? I asked, my voice trembling. I want to help you, he corrected gently. It's not something I do to you. It's something we do together. It only works if the person wants it. It's not a transformation, Alex. It's a revelation. It reveals what's already there. A revelation. The word echoed in the quiet of the room. That was what I had been searching for in the mirror for all those years. A revelation. I looked at the book, at the strange, beautiful script that seemed to hum with a latent energy. I looked at my best friend, whose ridiculous, wonderful heart was so full of a belief I could not comprehend. The fear was a roaring ocean in my ears, but underneath it, that tiny flicker of hope was growing into a flame. What would it do? I asked. Leo smiled, a slow, brilliant thing. It would make you her, he said, the word landing softly in the space between us. Her. He said it so simply, so easily. Not as a joke, not as a hypothetical, but as a fact. A truth he already knew. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, hot and sudden. I had never said that word out loud. I had barely dared to think it. But he had said it for me. And the world did not end. The room did not collapse. He just stood there, smiling, waiting. Okay, I breathed, the single word feeling like the biggest thing I had ever said. Okay. His grin widened. Okay, good. Now, this is the weird part. It needs a focus, a kind of physical anchor for the magic to build on, and, I might have bought some things. He scurried over to his closet and pulled out a large, flat box from a department store I had never seen him shop at. He placed it on his bed and opened it. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was a dress. It was a deep, shimmering emerald green made of a fabric that looked like liquid moonlight. It had long sleeves, a modest neckline, and a skirt that looked like it would move like water. It was elegant and understated, and so breathtakingly beautiful, it made my heart ache. Beside it was a pair of low, practical-looking black heels and a small velvet bag. I guessed on the size, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, a faint blush creeping up his cheeks. I sort of measured your gray sweater when you were in the shower. I hope that's not weird. The sales lady was super helpful. She had this look like she knew exactly who I was shopping for. It was not weird. It was the kindest, most thoughtful, most utterly insane thing anyone had ever done for me. I reached out and touched the dress, the fabric cool and impossibly soft beneath my fingertips. It felt like a promise. The magic itself was not a flash of light or a clap of thunder. It was quiet and strange. Leo had me sit on the edge of his bed, the box open before me. He placed his hands on my shoulders, his touch light and warm. He began to chant, his voice a low, melodic murmur. The words were in a language I did not recognize, but I felt them resonate in my bones, a deep, cellular hum. It was not a feeling of being changed, but of being settled. Like a misaligned picture frame being nudged perfectly straight. The tension I had carried in my shoulders for years began to dissolve. The knot in my stomach unwound. The frantic hummingbird in my chest grew still. He lifted his hands, and the humming faded. He looked exhausted, but triumphant. "Okay," he panted slightly. "The door's open. The rest is up to you." I felt the same, and yet entirely different. The air seemed lighter. My own body felt less like a cage and more like a possibility. I stood up, my movements feeling fluid and new. I picked up the dress. It felt like it weighed nothing. "Go," he said, gesturing toward my room. "The party starts in an hour. Take your time." I walked back to my room, the green dress clutched to my chest like a holy relic. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, my heart pounding a slow, steady rhythm. The ritual in the bathroom had been about stripping away. This felt different. This was about building. I laid the dress on my bed, the emerald fabric a slash of vibrant color in my muted gray room. It was an invasion of beauty. I stripped off my old clothes, the worn sweatpants and faded t-shirt, and let them fall to the floor in a sad gray pile. I stood in my underwear, my skin still tingling from the lotion, and the lingering hum of Leo's strange energy. The air on my skin felt different. It was a caress, not a judgment. I stepped into the dress. The cool, liquid slide of the silk against my newly smooth legs was a revelation. It was a sensation so exquisite, so completely and perfectly right, that I had to close my eyes and just breathe for a moment. It felt like coming home to a place I had never been. I pulled the dress up, shrugging it over my shoulders. It settled around me as if it had been tailored for my body. The fabric did not just hang, it draped, it flowed. It seemed to understand the lines of my form better than I did. My hands were shaking as I reached behind me to pull up the zipper. It slid shut with a soft, final zip. I stood there for a long time, my eyes still closed, just feeling the weight and texture of it. The long sleeves were snug but not tight. The neckline rested perfectly on my collarbones. I could feel the gentle sway of the skirt around my calves with every small shift of my weight. It was the most comfortable thing I had ever worn. It felt more like a second skin than a piece of clothing. Then came the makeup. Leo had thought of that too. In the small velvet bag was a curated selection of items. Not a huge, intimidating palette, but a few carefully chosen things. A tinted moisturizer, a tube of mascara, a pot of soft, rosy blush, and a sheer, berry-colored lip tint. It was a beginner's kit, a gentle introduction. A fortress of brushes and powders was a battle for another day. This was an invitation. I went back into the bathroom, my sanctuary, my prison. But it felt different now. Walking in, the swish of the skirt against my legs was a new kind of music. I did not look in the mirror, not yet. I focused on the task at hand, arranging the small collection of makeup on the counter. I had watched tutorials before, late at night, on my phone with the screen dimmed, my heart aching with a nameless longing. I had a theoretical knowledge, but no practice. My hands, which had been so steady with the razor, were clumsy now. I squeezed out too much moisturizer, the cool liquid pooling in my palm. I applied it tentatively, my fingers tracing the contours of that stranger's face. My face. The skin softened, the tone evening out. It was a subtle change, but it was there. Next, the blush. I dabbed the creamy color onto the apples of my cheeks. My first attempt leaving a clownish-looking circle. I grimaced, my reflection still avoided, and blended it out with my fingertips, softening the color into a faint, natural-looking flush. It was the color of a brisk walk in the cold, the color of a secret joy rising to the surface. The mascara was the most difficult part. My hand trembled as I brought the tiny, spidery wand toward my eye. I was terrified of poking myself, of smudging the black ink all over my face. I held my breath, my other hand bracing against the counter. I gently brushed the wand against my lashes, top and bottom. The change was instant and startling. My eyes, which had always seemed tired and muted, suddenly looked awake, defined. They seemed larger, deeper. They looked like my eyes, but more so. Finally, the lip tint. I twisted the cap off and breathed in the faint, sweet scent of berries. I dabbed the color onto my bottom lip and pressed them together. It left a stain, a just-bitten look that was subtle and soft. The ritual was complete. The armor was on. And this time, I knew with absolute certainty that it was not armor at all. It was skin. It was time. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs, my chest rising against the soft fabric of the dress. I lifted my head and opened my eyes. I looked in the mirror and I saw her. It was not a stranger. Not anymore. The face looking back at me was mine. The jaw was softer. The line of my neck seemed longer, more elegant. My hair, which I had always kept in a shaggy, non-committal style, now fell in soft waves that framed my face, a shade darker and richer than I remembered. My shoulders, which I always held hunched and tight, were now relaxed, flowing into the line of the dress. The figure was slender, the fabric of the dress hinting at a subtle curve at the waist and hips that I had never possessed. But the eyes were the same. And for the first time, they were not searching for something. They were just seeing. They were seeing me. A sob caught in my throat, a sound that was half grief and half ecstatic relief. Grief, for all the years I had spent looking at a reflection that felt like a lie. Relief that the truth was so much more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. It was me. A version of me I had only ever met in dreams. The alignment was so profound, so complete, it felt like a physical click, like a dislocated joint snapping back into place. Every part of me, from the way the fabric swished around my legs to the faint flush on my cheeks, felt correct. It was a symphony that had finally found its keynote. I reached out a trembling hand and touched the mirror, my fingertips meeting the fingertips of the girl on the other side. Her eyes were wide, luminous with unshed tears. "Hi," I whispered to her, my voice thick with emotion. "There you are." She did not answer, of course, but she smiled. A real smile, not the tight, practiced grimace I usually offered my reflection, but a slow, wondrous curve of the lips that reached all the way to her eyes. My eyes. I spent a long time just looking. I turned from side to side, watching the way the skirt moved, the way the light caught the shimmer in the emerald fabric. I lifted a hand to my face, tracing the line of my cheekbone, feeling the impossible softness of my own skin. The magic had not erased me. It had not pasted a new face over my own. It had simply edited. It had taken the raw material of me and chiseled away the parts that did not belong, revealing the sculpture that had been hiding underneath all along. It had taken the truth of my soul and painted it onto my skin. The shoes were the final test. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and slipped them on. They were not stilettos, just a simple, elegant heel an inch or so high. Still, they felt like stilts. I stood up carefully, my ankles wobbling. I took a tentative step, then another. It was a terrifying tightrope walk. My center of gravity had shifted. The way I held myself, the way I moved, had to be relearned. I walked back and forth across the small tiled floor of the bathroom, my steps clumsy at first, then slowly, gradually, becoming more confident. The slight elevation changed my posture, forcing me to stand up straighter, to engage my core. It made the swish of the dress even more pronounced. It felt powerful. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Alex, you okay in there? People are starting to show up." It was Leo. My heart hammered against my ribs. The bathroom was safe. The mirror was safe. The mirror was a kind and silent confidant. But out there were people. Eyes, judgments. The old fear, the familiar fear, came rushing back in, cold and sharp. What would they think? Would they see the trick? Would they see the boy in the dress? Would they see something creepy? "Alex?" Leo's voice was softer now, laced with concern. "You don't have to come out if you don't want to. We can just call it a night. I can send everyone home." His offer was a warm, comfortable blanket. It was so tempting to pull it over my head and disappear. To stay in this room with this beautiful girl in the mirror forever. But that would be another kind of prison, wouldn't it? I looked at my reflection one last time. She looked scared, yes. Her eyes were wide with apprehension. But she was also resolute. She was standing up straight. She was not hiding. She had waited her whole life for this. I could not let her down now. "I'm coming," I said, my voice clearer and a little higher than I expected. It sounded right. It sounded like hers. I took one last deep breath. I put my hand on the doorknob. The metal was cold against my palm. This was it. The step from the private space into the shared one. I turned the knob and pulled the door open. Leo was standing right there, his expression a mixture of anxiety and hope. When he saw me, his face went slack. His jaw literally dropped. He just stared, his eyes wide, taking in the whole picture from the top of my head to the tips of the small heels on my feet. He did not say anything for a long time. The silence stretched, and my carefully constructed confidence began to crumble. My hands twisted together, the fabric of the dress suddenly feeling like a costume. My face grew hot. This was a mistake. It was too much. I looked ridiculous. "Leo?" I whispered, my voice barely a squeak. "Say something." He blinked, as if waking from a dream. He swallowed hard. "Wow," he breathed. The word was full of genuine, unadulterated awe. "Alex, you..." He shook his head, a slow, disbelieving smile spreading across his face. "You look... correct." "Correct. Not pretty, not beautiful, not convincing. Correct." It was the perfect word. It was the only word. It was everything I had felt looking in the mirror, articulated in a single, simple utterance from the one person whose opinion mattered most. The dam of my anxiety broke, and a wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over me. I laughed, a real, bubbling laugh that felt like it came from a part of my lungs I had never used before. "Correct?" I echoed, my voice playful. "That's all you've got? After all that magical effort?" He laughed with me, the sound full of warmth. Okay. You also look... Holy cow. You look incredible. Like if the night sky decided to become a person. The dress... it's perfect." He stepped back, giving me a little more space. "How do you feel?" "I feel..." I paused, searching for the right word. "Like I just put on glasses for the first time and realized the whole world isn't supposed to be blurry." His smile was so bright it could have lit up the hallway. "Good," he said simply. "That's what I was hoping for." He offered me his arm. "Ready to face the teeming masses?" I hesitated, my hand hovering over his arm. The low murmur of voices and music from the living room suddenly sounded like a roaring crowd. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice small again. What will I say?" "You don't have to say anything you don't want to," he said, his voice firm and reassuring. "You're my friend. You're visiting from out of town. Her name is Allie." He said the name so casually, but it landed in my chest like a sunbeam. Allie. It felt as right as the dress, as correct as the reflection. "And if anyone is anything less than completely lovely to you, I will personally turn them into a garden gnome. It's in the book, page 74. I looked into his eyes, and I saw nothing but fierce loyalty and unwavering support. He was my anchor. With him, I could do this. I took his arm, my fingers curling around his bicep. The fabric of his shirt was soft. His arm was solid and warm beneath it. I took a deep breath and let him lead me out of the hallway and into the light of the living room. The world did not stop. No one gasped. The music did not cut out. The 10 or so people scattered around the room, chatting in small groups, barely glanced up. It was the most wonderfully anticlimactic moment of my life. I was just another person at a party. My hyper-awareness was still there, a frantic buzzing beneath my skin. I felt every glance, imagined every thought. But Leo kept a steadying hand on my arm, guiding me toward the kitchen. "Drink?" he asked, his voice a low murmur in my ear. "You look like you could use a drink." "Please," I breathed. He poured me a glass of white wine, his movements easy and casual. He handed it to me, our fingers brushing. The simple contact sent a jolt through me. A few of his friends drifted over, drawn by his gravity. A woman with bright pink hair named Maya, and a tall, lanky guy named Ben. "Leo, you didn't tell us you had company," Maya said, her smile warm and genuine. She looked at me. "I'm Maya. You have amazing hair, by the way." My mind went completely blank. I had prepared for invasive questions, for weird looks, for outright hostility. I had not prepared for a simple, genuine compliment. Thank you," I stammered, my cheeks flushing. "I'm Allie." Saying the name out loud felt like stepping off a cliff, but it landed softly. It sounded real. "Allie," Ben repeated, nodding with a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you. Are you new in town?" Leo jumped in smoothly. "Allie's an old friend of mine. She's just visiting for a bit." He squeezed my arm gently, a silent signal of support. The conversation flowed around me. They talked about classes, about a terrible movie they had all seen, about Leo's absurd spoonbird sculpture. I mostly listened, sipping my wine, my knuckles white where I gripped the stem of the glass. I was a ghost at the feast, terrified of making a sound that would reveal the illusion. But no one seemed to notice my silence. They included me with easy, casual questions, and Leo would often answer for me, sensing my panic. It was a masterclass in social navigation. He was my shield and my translator. After a while, the initial terror began to subside, replaced by a strange sense of calm. I was doing it. I was existing in a room full of people, as Allie, and nobody was screaming and running away. Nobody was pointing or laughing. The dress was not a costume, it was just a dress. My makeup was not a mask, it was just makeup. I was just a woman at a party. The sheer, unadulterated normalcy of it was intoxicating. Later, I found myself standing alone by the balcony door, watching the city lights twinkle in the darkness. The party was in full swing now, the music a little louder, the conversations more animated. Leo was across the room, locked in a deep conversation about film theory with Ben. I felt a pang of my old loneliness, a familiar ache. Even here, in this new skin, I was still on the outside looking in. That's a pensive look. I turned. A woman I had not met yet was standing beside me. She was older, maybe in her late 20s, with kind eyes and a calm, centered presence. She was holding a bottle of beer. "Sorry," I said automatically. "I was just zoning out," she finished for me, smiling. "I get it. Parties can be a lot. I'm Sarah." "Allie," I replied, my voice steadier this time. "That's a lovely name," she said. "And I have to tell you, that dress is absolutely stunning on you. The color is perfect." It was the second compliment of the night, and it landed just as strangely as the first. This was from a complete stranger, an affirming stranger. She was not trying to be polite. Her praise was casual, observational, like commenting on the weather. It was a simple statement of fact, and it made me feel solid, real. The fear that I was an imposter, a fraud in a clever disguise, receded just a little bit more. "Thank you," I said, and this time I managed a real smile. "My friend picked it out for me. He has good taste." I glanced over at Leo, who happened to look up at that exact moment. He caught my eye and gave me a small, questioning smile. I smiled back, a genuine, grateful smile, and he seemed to relax. As the night wore on, I found myself slowly unclenching. I had a long conversation with Maya about classic science fiction novels. I helped Ben figure out why the Bluetooth speaker kept disconnecting. I was not the life of the party, but I was at the party. I was a participant. The awkwardness of my new body began to feel less like a liability and more like a quirk. I nearly tripped walking back from the kitchen, the heel catching on the rug, and instead of being mortified, I just laughed, catching myself on the wall. Maya laughed with me. It was not mockery, it was shared amusement. It was human. The last guests trickled out after midnight, leaving behind a comfortable mess of empty bottles and crumpled napkins. I helped Leo gather them, the familiar domestic ritual feeling new and different in the dress and heels. When we were done, we stood in the quiet living room, the city lights painting patterns on the floor.
"So,"
he said, breaking the silence, "on a scale from 1 to please turn me into a garden gnome, how was it?" I looked at him. My best friend, my magician, my anchor. "It was terrifying," I said honestly. "And it was the best night of my life." He beamed. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I said, my voice soft. I looked down at myself, at the shimmering green fabric, at the hands that looked so delicate and right. I've never felt this quiet in my own head. It's like all the static is gone. I looked back up at him. Thank you, Leo. I don't have the words for what this means. You don't need them, he said, his voice gentle. He stepped closer, his expression uncharacteristically serious. I should have said this earlier, when you came out of the bathroom. I was just so stunned. Allie, you are so beautiful. This time the word did not feel like a compliment. It felt like a confession. It hung in the air between us, charged with all the years of our friendship, with the quiet magic of the evening. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a moment before gently cupping my cheek. His thumb brushed along my jawline. The touch was electric, a spark that lit up every nerve in my body. It was not the casual, brotherly touch I was used to from him. This was different. This was new territory. He leaned in slowly, his eyes searching mine, asking a question without words. And in that moment, all the fear, all the anxiety, all the years of feeling wrong and out of place, they all melted away. And there was only this: the quiet of the room, the warmth of his hand on my skin, and the undeniable truth that this was right. This was correct. I leaned in, closing the small gap between us, and our lips met. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deepened with a sense of discovery. It was not the kiss of a boy kissing a boy who looked like a girl. It was not the kiss of a friend trying something new. It was a kiss of profound recognition. It was the feeling of a key turning in a lock. It was the feeling of coming home. When we finally broke apart, we just rested our foreheads together, breathing in the same space. The magic was still humming in the air, but it was not coming from the book anymore. It was coming from us. So, he whispered, his voice a little shaky. My girlfriend, huh? I laughed, a quiet, happy sound. Is that what the title is now? Seems to fit, he murmured, his thumb stroking my cheek. I knew the magic was temporary. Leo had said it would fade by morning. I would wake up and the stranger in the mirror would be back. The thought sent a pang of grief through me, a sharp, sudden ache. But as I stood there, wrapped in the safety of his arms, looking at a future that suddenly seemed to have 1,000 new possibilities, the grief was overshadowed by something else. Hope. This night was not an ending. It was not a fantasy. It was a beginning. It was a proof of concept. The girl in the mirror was not a magical illusion. She was a promise. She was real. I had met her. I knew she was in there. The magic had not created her. It had just opened the door so I could see her. And now that I had, I knew I could find my way back to her. It would be a long journey, a path with no map. But for the first time in my life, I knew which direction to walk. I was not lost anymore. I was just at the start of the road, and I was not walking it alone.